Hey, ladies and gentlemen, fight fans all around the world, we're talking some boxing and what you need. Don't forget you can subscribe to my channel, and of course, most importantly, since I depend on that, donate to my channel. You can donate via online, Western Union, or MoneyGram. I can give you the details. All you have to do is contact me. All right. Let's get into what we're gonna do. It's a reaction video to Johnny Boy's video, which talks about really Canelo's resume. He describes Canelo's resume as overhyped. And the question is, does he have a point? Does he have a point? Is Canelo's resume overhyped? It depends. It depends on what the claims are about Canelo's resume. You know? So depending on, there are some fans who really do overhype Canelo. I know that for a fact. So in a way, what Johnny Boy is saying could be true. It could be taken as true, or it could be taken as, somebody just being hypercritical about Canelo Alvarez. It depends on how you're looking at it. First of all, I want to just say with Canelo Alvarez, when I talk about his resume, you'll notice that I completely leave out certain fighters. I don't even mention them. And the reason I don't mention them is because I believe that these fighters are way past their best. Not necessarily past their prime, but one, they're not healthy. Two, they're not even at the top of their game. They're not even in the top 10 of anything, in rankings or anything like that. Shout out to Tommy Temper. What's up, my dude? Dude, we got to do something today, okay? We got to do something today. So we're going to see how it goes. So it really does depend, obviously, on your perspective of Canelo Alvarez's resume. Because as much as I say that Canelo Alvarez has one of the best resumes out there today, if you take that in a totalitarian context, you could pick that thing apart. You're on EJ Boxing Live right now? Hey, man, I would like to be on EJ Boxing Live too, man. We'll see what happens. We'll see what happens. If EJ just keeps on going, I'm going to finish this video in about 10 minutes. So if you're looking, I think Johnny Boy has a certain point here, because if you look at his resume in totality, he has a point. Canelo has a lot of fights, but he's fought a lot of guys. Okay. He's fought a lot of guys who, Canelo got a lot of fights. He's got 55 fights, right? Now, the one thing you have to take in consideration is Canelo is not he never really had an extensive amateur background. So it kind of makes sense that he has a lot of fights. He didn't fight fighters like Julio Cesar Chavez did. Like, he didn't fight debutants while he was a world champion. But still, at the same time, Canelo had these gimme fights in between his championship fights. Okay? So I can get where Johnny Boy is talking about, and so he starts breaking it down. When Canelo became world champion, for instance, getting a vacant title, he didn't mention this, but I'm going to mention it. The guy who he beat to get the championship weren't no top tier fighter, never became a world champion. Matthew Hatton, Ricky Hatton's brother. Okay? Tough guy, British dude. But, what did it mean? Canelo faced an old, washed-up Carlos Baldomir and knocked him out, right? Got the name. There's a trend with Canelo. Canelo liked to fight fighters with great reputation, with great resume. Whether they over the hill or not, he want to face them, right? So when he faced Carlos Baldomir, legendary fighter, lineal champion at welterweight, but that was so many years before he faced him, right? We're talking about 2006. That was 4 years ago. And 4 years can be forever for a certain type of fighter. But Canelo faced Carlos Baldomir. He wanted to face Carlos Baldomir. He faced Carlos Baldomir, and he beat him. Now, to Canelo's credit, before he became world champion, he faced some good guys. Not for his level at the time. One of them was Leonardo Tyner. Leonardo Tyner is a very good fighter, very good all-around fighter. Another, reasonably good all-around fighter that Canelo faced. In fact, A guy who became world champion and was world champion at lightweight for a very long time is Miguel Vasquez, notoriously difficult to fight and beat. So I mean, Canelo did face on the come up, some pretty good fighters. Of course, Miguel Vasquez, he went down to lightweight. He finally came back up to welterweight. Canelo being a welterweight, he started off at super lightweight, then he was in welterweight, and then he quickly went to super welterweight, right? So he had one or two, but for the most part, a lot of these guys, even though they were undefeated fighters and stuff, their careers didn't really pick off and do anything, right? A lot of Mexican fighters and a lot of unknown guys, okay? So for this on the come up, okay? So when he did become world champion, it was a kind of step up for him. Matthew Hatton was a guy who had he had been a contender. He'd not been a titleless contender, but he'd been a contender for a little while. And Canelo faced him, okay? When he faced Matthew Hatton, he was able to beat him by unanimous decision. I think he broke his nose in the process of doing that. And Matthew Hatton was always he was a super welterweight, so it was a good matchup. But after he became world champion, he defended his title against guys we don't even talk about today. Ryan Rhodes. Who the fuck is that? We don't know. Then he defended against Alfonso Gomez. Alfonso Gomez had been a very good welterweight titleist contender. Now Alfonso Gomez moved up to super welterweight. Now remember, another thing that people forget, Canelo started off at super lightweight, and he was at welterweight. So some of these guys, as much as people want to say, oh, he pulled them up to super welterweight, not really, because Canelo started off at super lightweight. Okay, then he very quickly moved up to welterweight, and he campaigned at welterweight for a good period of his career. All right. In fact, I would think the majority of his career, he campaigned to. Okay, cool. I'm gonna check that out right now. He campaigned at welterweight. That's what people don't know. He spent a great portion of his time at welterweight. A great number of fights. 20-something fights. So he was a welterweight for a good period of time, and then he moved up to super welterweight. Now, so some of these guys moved up to super welterweight, and he faced them. One of them was Alfonso Gomez. Again, Alfonso Gomez was past it, right? His best days were behind him. And Canelo was able to knock his ass out. I see that. Cool, man. I'm trying to get up in there, Tommy Temper, right after I'm done here. Then he faced Kermit Cintron. Kermit Cintron was past his. Kermit Cintron had just fallen out the ring against Paul Williams. He was winning the fight, and dude just took a dive and dived out the ring for no reason. Paul Williams just got knocked. He just knocked Paul Williams to the side, and he just dove out the ring. So the following year, he faced Kermit Cintron, and he was able to knock him out in 5 rounds. Okay, Kermit Cintron, I think, was ranked as the number 3 or something like that, super welterweight in the world at the time Canelo faced him, if I'm correct. Okay. He went on to face Shane Mosley. Now, Shane Mosley, again, was past it, but he put on a hell of a performance. People thought Shane Mosley was done. Canelo was just going to write off his name. But Shane Mosley got himself into contention, so he was a contender for the WBC title. All right, cool. He was going to be on for the WBC title. And, yeah, so Shane Mosley put himself in a position to be able to get this fight. Canelo wanted to fight him. Yeah, Shane Mosley was past his best, clearly. Okay, he wasn't ranked. But Shane Mosley, again, was a guy that campaigned at welterweight and super welterweight. So this was not a problem for Shane Mosley. Even though his last fight, if I'm not mistaken, was Pacquiao, where he had taken a drumming. But he actually performed very well against Canelo. Canelo was outboxing him at first, and then Shane Mosley just came back, and he was fighting back at Canelo. It was a good fight. Put up a good performance, and that probably was his last good performance. I mean, Pablo Cesar Cano was a good performance as well. So, but Shane Mosley was pretty much done after that. And then after that, he went and faced Josecito Lopez. Josecito Lopez A lot of people like to talk about Jose Lopez was a super lightweight, which is true. He campaigned at super lightweight. However, I do believe that Jose Lopez, if I'm not mistaken, let me see if I'm right. Yep. Jose Lopez adjusts for Victor Ortiz at welterweight. Even though he fought Jesse Vargas and lost to him at a catchweight in between welterweight and super lightweight, he actually fought Jesse Vargas at welterweight. In fact, Jose Lopez was a guy that campaigned in between super lightweight and welterweight, or junior welterweight and welterweight. He fought a number of fights, like kind of like Jesse Vargas. He fought a number of fights in between junior welterweight and welterweight. So, for instance, his fights with Marvin Cordova, Sergio Rivera, Jesse Vargas, Victor Ortiz were at welterweight. A small welterweight, but anyways, Canelo was a welterweight as well. Of course, he would have the weight advantage because he was a lot bigger than Jose Lopez. Jose Lopez just won outstandingly against Victor Ortiz, breaking Victor Ortiz's jaw. So he moved up in weight to face Canelo. Canelo knocked his ass out. All right. And after that, Marcus Maidana knocked his ass out. So he was just a guy that was like a pinata for a minute. Anyway, so these were the fights that he had before his unification with Austin Trout. All right. Now, if anybody says, "Oh, these were outstanding fights," then they're crazy as hell. Okay. These were not outstanding fights. Okay. Canelo was basically preying off of guys we don't know, we never hardly knew about, or guys who were past it, or guys who were smaller than him, right? Never mind that he also came from super lightweight. So one of the things I want people to understand is that Canelo came up from super lightweight. So if he fights a guy who's coming up from super lightweight, in a way, technically speaking, it's kind of like Floyd facing Miguel Cotto. Miguel Cotto obviously was the bigger guy, right? But Miguel Cotto came up from super lightweight. Floyd came up from welterweight. That wasn't too much of a problem for him to face Miguel Cotto at super welterweight, right? Canelo now is going up in weight and facing Sergey Kovalev, who is a light heavyweight, right? So what? I mean, Canelo's not a light heavyweight. Clearly, he's not. He's probably going to end up his career at super middleweight, but he can make middleweight. And maybe, possibly with a big push, he could make super welterweight again. So what I'm trying to show you guys is Canelo's not a light heavyweight. So it's interesting hearing people talk about, Canelo pulled up Jose Lopez to face him and blah, blah, blah. Jose Lopez took the challenge. Jose Lopez said, okay, let's do it. Or he wanted Canelo, whatever it was. Right? So you can't really. Floyd faced Marquez. Marquez went up 2 weight classes from lightweight all the way up to welterweight to face Floyd. People criticize Floyd for that, but Marquez wanted that fight, right? How many times have we seen this? Shane Mosley went up to face Oscar De La Hoya. He went up 2 weight classes. Mikey Garcia went up to face Errol Spence. He went up 2 weight classes. Nobody's blowing out Errol Spence on Mikey Garcia fight, right? Of course, he didn't get Mikey Garcia out of there, so I guess that's one of the reasons. But you look at it, Canelo moved up in weight to face Golovkin. I mean, guys do these things. Lomachenko repeatedly moved up in weight, so now he's at lightweight, right? Even though he was at lightweight in the amateurs. That's a whole other story. But anyways, right? Moving up in weight, Terrence Crawford moved up from lightweight. He's now at welterweight, right? So, I mean, it happens. You move up in weight. There's nothing wrong with a guy moving up in weight to face another guy. You cannot say that this guy's weight bully or he has weight advantage if the other guy decided and agreed to moving up in weight to face him. Guillermo Rigondeaux moved up in weight to face Vasily Lomachenko. Yeah, okay. Guillermo Rigondeaux is really a super bantamweight. We know Lomachenko had him facing him at super featherweight. We got it. But at the end of the day, Rigondeaux agreed to it. You know what I'm saying? I'm just saying. So, while I do agree with Johnny Boy, you cannot count these fights. And anybody counting these fights, they out of their damn mind. This is not why Canelo's resume is good, in my opinion. But if anybody thinks that this is why Canelo's resume is good, then they are overhyping his resume. Because there's no way in God's green earth that those set of names I just said in any way makes Canelo's resume good or better than other people's resume. It doesn't. All right? Canelo's resume starts to become good when he faced Austin Trout. Now, this is where Johnny Boy is absolutely and incontrovertibly wrong. Austin Trout comprehensively beat Amiga Cotto, who was not past it. Who wasn't past it. Okay? How do we know this? Amiga Cotto went on to become middleweight champion of the world. If a guy's past it, he ain't going to become no world champion against the lineal champion. I don't care. That lineal champion, he's badly injured or whatever, and which was the case with Sergio Martinez. He was injured. Nonetheless, ain't no way in hell you moving up 2 weight classes and beating somebody at middleweight. Now, there's a caveat to this. Sergio Martinez started his career at welterweight. So Sergio Martinez, if you think about it, is a blown up welterweight who's fighting at middleweight. He could make middleweight. And he wasn't a big middleweight, right? Miga Cotto wasn't a middleweight at all. He was a super welterweight. But he started his career at super lightweight, like Canelo. I want you guys to understand what I'm saying. So, Miga Cotto and Canelo Alvarez are round about the same size. Not weight, size. There's a difference. All right? All right, so let's get to it. So Austin Trout was, they say it's a decent win. I said it was a good win. It was a good win. Austin Trout at the time was in his prime, what you guys call in his prime, right? He was in physical prime. He was at the top of his game because he had his greatest win of his entire fucking career, was beating Miga Cotto. The caveat here, where I agree with Johnny Boy, is Miga Cotto was coming off a loss to Floyd Mayweather. All right? And when a fighter's coming off a loss, you shouldn't go into a tough fight right after that. You look at Canelo Alvarez. He didn't go into a tough fight right after the Mayweather loss. He went and faced Alfredo Angulo, right? Who just recently beat Peter Quillen. So it shows what do we know about shit? You know what I'm saying? Anyways, obviously Alfredo Angulo had just come off of a great, terrific loss to Erislandy Lara. He had dropped Erislandy Lara twice. He was going in for the kill. Erislandy was lucky enough to hit him, thumb him in the eye, and give him a big hematoma over his eye and break his eye socket or some shit like that. And so as a result of that, Alfredo Angulo had eye problems. So Canelo went into the fight facing the Alfredo Angulo wasn't his best. He had eye problems, and the referee didn't want his eye to get worse. All right? He had a bad eye injury. I think Lara broke his eye socket or some shit like that. So he couldn't continue to fight. And I don't think it was he that stopped the fight. I think it was either his corner that stopped the fight. Anywho's, the point is, Alfredo Angulo, Canelo faced him, and basically was out tagging his ass. But a lot of people would say, Canelo was getting tired, and the momentum was starting to shift, and Angulo was getting his chance, because Angulo usually comes on late. Was getting his chance in the fight, and the referee stopped the fight. So, again, Johnny Boy, this is where he's coming from. He's saying, they always protected Canelo, and therefore, if you look at the fight details, that resume doesn't look as great as it does, Anyway, I skipped it. So, he faced Austin Trout. Canelo was calling out Floyd Mayweather for the longest while. He wanted to face Floyd Mayweather at 150. But when the fight came around, he was like, man, I need this to be 154 because he got bigger. This was the Josecito Lopez fight. He was trying to call out Floyd Mayweather from there. And he was saying, I'll do it at catch weight at 150 and shit like that. Literally, it's there. You can just go Google it and you'll see it. But the point is, at the end of the day, Canelo Alvarez got his Floyd Mayweather Jr. fight. It was at a catch weight of 152 pounds. All right. Canelo was a little bit weight drained in that fight. I always note that. He was weight drained. So in later rounds of the fight, he was tiring. Okay. Nonetheless, Floyd Mayweather Jr. beat his ass. It wasn't a majority decision. That was a unanimous decision win by a landslide. 111-117 was what Dave Moretti had it as. Oh, I'm sorry. No, I'm wrong. Craig Metcalfe had it as 9 rounds to 3, which is very merciful, if you ask me. Dave Moretti had it 8 rounds to 4, which is even closer, which I was like, wow, you gave Canelo 4 rounds. CJ Ross had 114, and she's never judged a fight since then. Major fight. She's been out of boxing for because people were like, "What the?" Everybody was like, "What the fuck?" Even Canelo. Canelo was like, "Hell no." You would think Canelo would be agreeing with that. Nope. Canelo was like, "What?" Canelo was like, "Hell no, 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 no." He's like, "No, no, 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 no." Canelo knew he lost that fight, and he was like, but it was a priceless learning experience. So after he lost to Floyd Mayweather, what does he do? He faces Alfredo Angulo. You got to take a fight where you're really good at what you do to build back your confidence. And Canelo throws combinations and he goes toe to toe and he fights like a beast. And he was able to do that against Alfredo Angulo, just let his hands fly and just get his confidence back. And that's what Mika Cotto didn't get with Austin Trout. He just jumped into another very highly contestable fight. Now, Austin Trout, of course, was the WBA champion. Mika Cotto just jumped right back in. I was like, oh, man, I need to get back my belt, my WBA belt. So he just jumped right back in and went at Austin Trout, which was a dumb thing to do. And so he lost that fight to Austin Trout, right? So I think mentally Mika Cotto was on losing end. He didn't have the confidence, and I think Austin Trout was able to take advantage of that. That's what I think. I don't think that Mika Cotto was done, not by a long shot. I think Mika Cotto lost that Trout fight because it's coming off a loss Mayweather fight, and that's what a lot of people don't understand. If you fight a fighter coming off a loss, you have to actually have a better chance of beating that fighter because mentally, because boxing is 90% mental, 10% physical. Mentally, that person may be still kind of questioning themselves, wondering how to get back on the right track and win. If it was a close fight, though, where it could have gone either way, it's a totally different story, right? So it depends on how you lose as well. And in the case with Cotto, Floyd caught him with an uppercut in the 12th round and stunned him and kind of was really boxing him up for a minute. And then he turned around and it went to the bell. You know, that's not a way to end a fight. You ended a fight, being bedazzled and like trying to catch your bearings back. So that's how he ended the fight. And Cotto was very angry about that and, didn't do no interviews, just went off and he was just pissed. He knew he didn't win the fight, but he was like angry with his trainer and everybody because this was a fight he thought he could win. All right, so, and to be honest, if you want to know the toughest fight of Floyd Mayweather's career, in my opinion, at least the most grueling fight of Floyd Mayweather's career, I think it was Cotto fight. I think Cotto gave him a more hotly contested fight than people really know. Cotto gave Floyd quite a lot. I mean, we all saw Floyd's face. He was busted up. It was bloodied. And that hadn't happened since the DeMarcus Corley fight. That was where Floyd was brawling DeMarcus Corley, and he got his face bloodied up. Floyd didn't even get his face bloodied up like that. He hadn't got his nose busted up and shit like that since the DeMarcus Corley fight. Actually, the Oscar De La Hoya fight, he got his nose bloody up as well. But not to the extent like with DeMarcus Corley and the Cotto fight. And he dropped Corley twice in that fight. It was a bad motherfucker. So, anyways, and we thought he was going to stop him in the 8th, actually. But that was a good fight, and I never really seen Floyd bloodied up like that, really. I think the Jesus Chavez fight, too. And I think the Carlos Baldomir fight, he got bloodied up a bit. Not to the extent, but he was bloodied up a bit. I'm trying to think of another fight where he was bloodied. There was another one, We had the Jesus Chavez fight. Jesus Chavez gave him a good fight. Let me tell you the fighters that gave Floyd a good fight. I know it's a sidetrack, but Jesus Chavez gave him everything he could handle. These fights prepared him for later. Emmanuel Augustus is another fight where he was bloodied up. His face was bloodied. His hands was mashed up. He destroyed his hands and his face was bloodied in that fight. Emmanuel Augustus gave him a good fight. Who else gave him a good fight, man? Castillo gave him a good fight going down the stretch. The first Castillo fight. Marcos Maidana gave him a good fight. Cotto. Carlos Baldomir was awkward as fuck. Couldn't use no jab on Carlos Baldomir. The jab didn't work. It was a good fucking fight, as much as Baldomir was slow. Who else gave him a good fight? There's a couple guys that gave him good fights, man. Gave him good ass fights. Literally, they were competitive fights. He was winning the rounds, but they were competitive fights. Very competitive fights. You know this kid too from the Dominican Republic. That kid, Floyd was tagging his ass and he would not go down, and he just fought him all the way to the end. They went 12 rounds. I forgot what he was. Tough as nails, man. So Floyd knows about landing all your power shots on the dude, and the dude ain't going away. He been down that road. Anyways, so he faced Alfredo Angulo. That was his comeback fight, and then he jumped right into hot one, Arislandi Lara. Now again, Johnny Boy is not absolutely wrong here when he was talking about how it was a controversial decision, and he thought that the judges' scorecards did not reflect the fight. Levi Martinez, for example, had a 117-111, which was a whack ass scorecard. Canelo didn't beat Arislandi Lara 9 rounds to 3. Get the fuck out of here. All right, it was a closer fight than that. Dave Moretti had it 7 rounds to 5, and Jerry Roth had it 7 rounds to 5 for Arislandi Lara. Talking about that, the Austin Trout fight too, the scorecards were really whack on that. I can understand 115-112, 8 rounds to 2. I could understand that. I could understand 7 rounds to 5. The fight was close. Okay. So if you had it 115-112, which is 7 rounds to 5, that sound more like the fight because Canelo's coming from behind and Arislandi Lara was ahead by about 4 rounds. So to just, Arislandi Lara just needed 3 more rounds to win. Right? And Canelo kind of took over the fight and basically took the remaining rounds. I think Arislandi Lara got at least 1 round or maybe 2 rounds. So we were talking about like 114-113 for Canelo because of the. Did he have a knockdown? Yeah. Did he have a knockdown? He didn't have no knockdown. What the fuck am I talking about? But he did bust up Arislandi Lara's eye, and Arislandi Lara slipped and fell, and Canelo did a lot of damage in one of the rounds. So maybe they gave it a 10-8 round because of that. But a 115, 113, a 114-114. I wouldn't even say 114-114. I thought Canelo took the momentum of the fight. So a 115-113 would have been great. One judge had it whack ass kind of fucking score here, 117-111. What the fuck is that? And then when we look at the Austin Trout fight, the shit looked really stupid. 8 rounds to 4, okay, I could live with that. So 116-111, fine. 115-112, that sounds like the fight that Austin Trout fight was. But 118-109, what the fuck is that? 10 rounds to 2? How the fuck did that happen? You know what I'm saying? And that's the thing I can't take, man. The judges kind of fuck over Canelo. So that's where the judges, he got the judges in his back pocket, and Golden Boy always fucking up things. You know what I'm saying? Don't forget to smash that like button, people. And so, at the end of the day, man, when you look at the Arislandi Lara fight, people had that same criticism because of Levi Martinez scorecard. All right. Now, after the Arislandi Lara fight, what does he do? He take an easy fight. So he faces James Kirkland. So, and then he goes and faces Miguel Cotto. Now, Johnny Boy said that Miguel Cotto was like an old Miguel Cotto at the end of his, past his prime, and he was like dusted. And let me say this. One, Miguel Cotto boxed like a motherfucker in that fight. He didn't look old at all. All right. So you know, and the other thing Johnny Boy is not taking into consideration is when you have a fighter with so much experience, that makes them actually more savvy, a better boxer than when they were younger. So Johnny Boy be thinking about in his prime kind of shit, and you can't think of it like that. Obviously, the boxer is going to be somebody that athletically and physically is not as good as he used to be when he was younger. But don't get it fucking twisted. They're going to be a hell of a lot more crafty, a hell of a lot more skilled, a hell of a lot more intelligent and smart in how they conduct things in there. And I thought Miguel Cotto did an outstanding job. In fact, he thought he won the fight. Okay? Now, if you'd come with the argument, Johnny Boy, that Miguel Cotto thought he won the fight, I could agree with you 100%. Again, you could say this was kind of like a controversial fight. That's what people have been saying. And they thought, Cotto jab Canelo and that kind of shit. But to say that Miguel Cotto was dusted, and no, he was not dusted. No fucking way Miguel Cotto was dusted. But the thing about it is that a lot of people forget, even though this was a middleweight fight, which Canelo won, it was fought at 155. In other words, both Miguel Cotto and Canelo were not middleweights. Now, here's the funny thing about it. It was fought at Canelo weight, by the way. That's what they called it. The funny thing about it is Miguel Cotto came in 153 and a half. You know what that means? Miguel Cotto is showing you, I ain't really a fucking middleweight. So everybody was like, Miguel Cotto need to face, Triple G. Miguel Cotto, Miguel Cotto's not a middleweight. And at the time, Canelo wasn't a middleweight, right? Canelo won the middleweight championship of the world. You know what that reminded me of? Henry Armstrong versus that Filipino kid. Henry Armstrong, I'm going to give you guys a bit of history. You guys go and check it out for yourself. Henry Armstrong won the welterweight title against a guy who was not a welterweight. Barney Ross. Barney Ross was, at the time, they actually had this division called the junior welterweight division, or super lightweight division. And Barney Ross held the super lightweight title, and he also held the lightweight title. Okay? So when Armstrong fought Barney Ross was actually 142 pounds. Just above the super lightweight limit. They're 142 pounds. Just above the super lightweight limit. And Henry Armstrong came in at 100 and I think it was 33 or 135 pounds Henry Armstrong came in at 100 and I think it was 33 or 135 pounds because he was a lightweight at the time. I think did he win the lightweight championship? I think he won the lightweight championship, or he won the featherweight champion. I can't remember which one it was. But he campaigned mostly at lightweight. So neither of them were welterweights. Neither of them came in at the welterweight limit. When Henry Armstrong fought for the middleweight championship of the world, neither of those motherfuckers was middleweights. Both of them came in way under the middleweight limit. Trying to make a point here so you guys will understand. Henry Armstrong, however, when he fought at featherweight and won the featherweight title from, I forgot what the kid's name is. It don't matter. I know who it is. It was a good fighter. Came in at the featherweight limit of 126 pounds. Okay? I quote this to show you guys something, because a lot of you guys don't know nothing about boxing, really. You don't know history, nothing, no shit, none of that shit, right? I say this to say Miguel Cotto and Canelo weren't middleweights. Canelo was still campaigning at 154. Yeah, he had the Canelo weight shit they was doing. But at the end of the day, Canelo had never fought at middleweight. He never fought a middleweight. Right? And it's so interesting how hypocritical people can be when they say, oh, Mikey Garcia, that was too big a leap for him to face Errol Spence. He never fought at welterweight. Why didn't he just fight at welterweight first before he fight Errol Spence? To be demanding that Canelo face Triple G, who's a fucking career middleweight, without ever having tested the middleweight division, right? And so I found it very interesting that for one guy, you guys are saying, oh, that's just too much for Mikey Garcia. But for another guy, oh, yeah, he's not middleweight champion. He should face the middleweight. I'm just saying. Now, honestly, he should have faced Gennady Golovkin. And if he decided to have a catch weight, Gennady Golovkin should have been cool enough with a catch weight, because guess what? His predecessor, Oscar De La Hoya, fought Bernard Hopkins at a catch weight of 155 for the middleweight championship of the world. Hopkins made the weight. Not only did he make the weight, but he beat Oscar De La Hoya by TKO. He stopped him. Okay? So Oscar had all the advantages in weight, and Hopkins came down and still stopped his ass and beat him. Gennady Golovkin showed us he don't want to ever move from 160. If he ever fight at 160, at something above 160, is against some dud like fucking Steve Ross. But he ain't gonna fight nobody above 160 That's what he basically showing. All right. So I'm just saying. I'm not saying that uh, Johnny Boy is wrong in saying that he fought, Omega Cota at 155. He's not wrong. But Omega Cota never was a middleweight. He never was. But yet y'all was saying, oh, Omega Cota, he ducking Gennady Golovkin. He fought, think about this. He fought Sergio Martinez at 158 pounds or 57 pounds. He didn't even fight him at the full middleweight limit. Fought him at a catchweight. And he fought every middleweight he faced at a catchweight. Think about it. He wasn't a fucking middleweight. And he told you so. And he proved it by going on with his career and becoming WBO super welterweight champion, which is where he really belonged. He became a world champion again after losing to Canelo. So, one, I disagree with Johnny Boy that Mika Cotto was past it. And two, I disagree with Johnny Boy that, Mika Cotto was, what do we call it? It was a fake middleweight champion, and they're fighting for a fake middleweight championship. I disagree with that. They fought for middleweight championships, yes, but like Henry Armstrong, Barney Russell, all these guys, they wasn't really middleweights, right? And Canelo at the time wasn't a middleweight, but he was willing to face Gennady Golovkin at a catchweight at that time. Okay. So people saying Canelo was trying to let the fight marinate. No, he wanted to face Gennady Golovkin, but he wasn't going to face him at the full middleweight limit. He was not going to do that. That was the one thing he wasn't going to do. And they were trying to iron out negotiations for that. And the thing went south. So then Johnny Boy criticizes Canelo for facing Amir Khan. Quite frankly, I do too. I was like, that's a fucked up fight. How's Khan going to ever win that fight? First of all, his chin will betray him. And then two, who cares? I mean, he ain't going to be able to maintain that speed and stuff. He's just way too small for Canelo. And true to form, Canelo knocked him out. But the thing about it is, a lot of people said Amir Khan outboxed Canelo and blah, 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 blah. No, he didn't. No, he didn't. Again, people don't pay attention to the body shots. Then Canelo went down in weight. So after being on Canelo weight for the longest while, he went down in weight at 154 pounds just to prove that he wasn't a middleweight and fought Liam Smith for the WBO title. And nobody gives a fuck about that, to be honest with you. At least I don't. All right. Then he goes up to 164 pounds, past middleweight, and faces Julio Cesar Chavez Jr. Julio Cesar Chavez Jr. was the light heavyweight. And he got him to get to 164, which is a catchweight between. It's crazy, but he should have really fought him at 168. He fought him at 164. Is what it is. Canelo getting the advantage of us in weight, and we don't count that shit either. All right. So he finally, after facing Julio Cesar Chavez Jr., being able to get used to the power and stuff, and having a professional fight just to make sure he was okay, then he faces Gennady Golovkin. All right. That's how that goes. He faced him, and at the full 160, and we all know what happened. It was a draw. Some people said Gennady Golovkin won. Johnny Boy can go on in detail about that. A lot of people say he held out the fight against Gennady Golovkin and blah, blah, blah. He didn't held out no fucking fight. He wanted to face him, but he was going to face him at a catchweight. He was not a middleweight at the time. He had not faced middleweight power. He had not faced middleweights. When he went up to face Julio Cesar Chavez Jr., that was to get used to the power of a very powerful middleweight. So he did the right thing, in my opinion. All right? He wasn't trying to get Gennady Golovkin to get old. He was willing to face Gennady Golovkin at any time. But the difference was, since he wasn't a fucking middleweight, ain't no fucking way in hell he just going to jump up there and fight this guy who got a lot of punching power. He's not used to the punching power. And not used to nothing. He said, okay, well, you're going to come down because I'm not a fucking middleweight. Right? I might be fighting everything at Canelo weight, but don't get it twisted. I ain't a middleweight. Right? And after he faced Julio Cesar Chavez Jr., he was ready for that. That's all to it. All right. And Canelo's argument was you claimed, or at least Abel Sanchez claimed, that you could fight from 154 to 175. So he called him on it. And he was smart. I think he did the smart thing, just like how Floyd did the smart thing. But you got to take away some of that credit from him. But nonetheless, like Floyd. But at the end of the day, he did the smart thing. You don't, if you a fucking, that's what I like about Canelo. He's not like Mikey Garcia, okay? If you know you're not a middleweight, okay? People can say what they want. They could say you blow up to 175 pounds. Guess what? Aristotle Lara does too. I mean, the Charlo brothers do too. That don't mean you a fucking middleweight. You understand what I'm saying? Have you been dealing with middleweight power? Have you been punched by a middleweight? That's what size is about. It's about when you get in the ring, can you handle that power? Can you handle the size of middle? And then Gennady Golovkin was a hard-hitting middleweight. So Canelo got to get used to that. You can't just jump up in there and just face the dude. That's not smart. You know what I mean? So Canelo got acclimatized to the power that he would have to deal with. Not only in sparring, but he actually went into an actual fight with a guy who would have that power. And everybody was talking about, this is the funny thing. Canelo did everything that Gennady Golovkin claimed he was going to do. Gennady Golovkin and Abel Sanchez said, oh yeah, we want to fight with Julio Cesar Chavez Jr. When Julio Cesar Chavez Jr. called him out and said, come and have a fight with me, but we're going to have to do it at 168. Gennady Golovkin all of a sudden was like, nah. All right, well, about 164. That's what Canelo fought Julio Cesar Chavez Jr. The argument was, okay, the dude is too big for me, so therefore we're going to do it at 164. Canelo took the fight. All that talk Gennady Golovkin had about facing Julio Cesar Chavez Jr. at 164, Canelo's the one that fought him. Expose number one. Expose number two. Who's the guy that fought at 154? Who's the guy going to be fighting at 175? And he going full 175. Why? Because the claim by Abel Sanchez, Gennady Golovkin, is I can beat everybody from 154 to 175. Well, guess what? Guess who's doing it? He picking and choosing who he fight at 175. Let's not get it twisted now. But at the end of the day, Canelo's the one doing it. Canelo's the doer. Gennady Golovkin's the talker. Him and Jonathan Banks. Just recently there, Jonathan Banks talking about how under his tutelage, Gennady Golovkin will knock out Canelo. Fuck out of here. Fuck out of here. Golovkin ain't doing shit to Canelo. All right? Next time, Canelo might just knock his ass out. Okay? Canelo's going up to 175. When has Golovkin done that? I'm just saying. Golovkin can't knock out Canelo. It never will happen. They could fight 100 times. Canelo beat him 100 times. I just decided to quote Floyd better. He not better than Canelo. Canelo's better than him in every single way. I don't care if y'all is fans of Golovkin or not. I don't care if y'all fans of Pacquiao or not. It's just a reality. If Pacquiao faces Floyd Mayweather, and if Golovkin faces Canelo, Canelo will beat, and Floyd will beat him every single time. I'm almost done, my brother. We're going through the resume. It's the resume he said is overrated. After this, Canelo goes up in weight at 168 and beats Rocky Fielding. Rocky Fielding having the paper championship for the WBA. Everybody now talking, even Golden Boy talking about this being a real championship. Fuck out of here. Callum Smith. You want to really talk about real championship belt? Callum Smith, right? Canelo ain't got nothing there. And then he goes on to face Daniel Jacobs. So what you get is Canelo, after he got beaten by Floyd Mayweather, after he beat Austin Trout, this is how you're doing it. One easy fight, one hard fight. One easy fight, one hard fight. But at the end of the day, we all know resume is all about who you fought and who you beat. And when we look at Canelo's resume, he got the best fucking resume when it comes to that, except for Manny Pacquiao. But even in the last 2 years, Canelo supersedes Manny Pacquiao because these are the guys he faced. The number two middleweight in the world at the time, Daniel Jacobs. The number one pound for pound fighter in the world by according to ESPN, Gennady Golovkin. He faced him not once, but twice. And he beat him the second time on the record. He also faced Miguel Cotto, where Miguel Cotto was the lineal middleweight champion of the world. And he beat him. He faced Arislan Dilar, who was the WBA super welterweight champion of the world, but they didn't fight for the championship because they fought at Canelo weight. Canelo didn't want the championship. He just wanted to beat the guy. He beat him by split decision. He faced Floyd Mayweather Jr., arguably the best fighter of all time. And then he faced Austin Trout, undefeated, 26-0, coming off the greatest win of his career, and also long-reigning WBA super welterweight champion. And by the way, just so you guys can see where Austin Trout, when he defended his championship, what kind of level he was at. So he beat Miguel Cotto. He beat Canelo's brother, Rigoberto Alvarez, to become the WBA World Super Welterweight Champion. And then he beat Delvin Rodriguez. Some people talk about a hard-hitting Puerto Rican fighter who Miguel Cotto also faced. Those are the guys that he beat. He had 4 successful defenses of his title before he lost to Canelo Alvarez. 5 wins. And the greatest win of his career, and the greatest win he has, is against Miguel Cotto. Of course, he went on after that to face Arislan Dilar, to lose because he got dropped in the later rounds. Then he went on to face Jamal Charlo and gave him a very tough fight. Jamal Charlo thought he would get him out of there. Gave him a tough fight. He then faced Jarrett Hurd, who knocked him out, stopped his ass. And he faced Jamal Charlo, where he, and all these are championship fights, by the way. He faced Jamal Charlo, where he had a very close fight with him again. Charlo got a majority decision. So he's been, a titleless contender after becoming a world champion. He's not quite made it to world championship level anymore. He's not gotten the world championship, but he's come damn near close. And if he keeps on going, and he's saying he's going down to welterweight now to compete. I don't know, man. We'll see what happens with that. But he's still fighting at, as far as we know, he's still fighting at super welterweight. So those are the names we talk about. When we talk about Canelo, those are the names we're talking about. And they're very, very high quality names. And you can't dispute that. Now, whether you want to dispute how he beat them and so on, that's another story. But when you talk about the quality of opponents he faced, and then who he faced and who he beat, you cannot dispute that shit. He has the best resume other than Manny Pacquiao in the sport, and in the last 2 years, he's had the toughest fights, because he's faced the very best. He's faced, pound for pound, the number one fighter in the world twice. It was Gennady Golovkin and Floyd Mayweather. He's faced the number one guy in his division. He's faced the number one guy in his division 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 times. 5 times. Who has done that? He has beat the number one guy in the division 4 times. Who has done that in boxing? Who? So, I mean, you have to, these are just facts. You have to face. All right? And that's where I come from. I say he has one of the best resumes in boxing because of those guys that he faced, those guys that he beat. And you can argue about how he beat them or whether he beat them comprehensively or all that shit. But at the end of the day, he faced the very best. So when his skills prove that he's better than those guys by judges, whether you like it or not, it shows just how good he is. And now he's going to take on Sergey Kovalev. All right? And again, on paper, it looks really impressive what he's about to do. We all know that it's more of an easier fight. So he had a tough fight with Danny Jacobs. This is an easier fight than Danny Jacobs' fight, for those people who don't know. But the challenge for for people who don't know, is the size. Because now he's just jumping straight up into light heavy. And the reason why he's doing that is because he faced a light heavy in Julio Cesar Chavez Jr. So it's kind of like, I've been there. I kind of dealt with light heavy before. I can go up and just deal with this guy. And then, Sergey has these gaping problems with his defense and with his body. So those things also allow Canelo to say, okay, I can take this guy. And the guy has a great legacy. And he's ranked as the number one light heavyweight in the world. So even with all those flaws, he still will want to face him, right? Canelo likes to chase after guys who have great resumes. And Kovalev is a much better fighter, I would say, than he was when he was the Crusher. Even the Kovalev that faced Bernard Hopkins does not box as well as the Kovalev now that faced Elito Alvarez the second time. I think he boxes better. The problem with him is, if you get past his jab, what does he have to offer you, right? But he's boxing better. I think he's more humble. I think he's more teachable now. He was relying too much on his power, and Andre Ward humbled his ass. So he's seen now as human, as immortal. And I think Kovalev, can pull it out. I think he can, with that kind of humility and teachability, do a lot better. And I think he's going to do excellently against Canelo. He's going to do very, very well. Even though he's going to get stopped, he's going to do very, very well. You know what I'm saying? So that's basically it. That's what I got. So Johnny Boy, I would say this to him. I would say, you got some points, bro. You got some points in terms of, if you look at the entire resume, if you look at the entire Canelo's resume, it's not that flattering, But if you look at the guys who he actually faced who were top tier, then it gets very exceptionally rare. Ain't nobody in boxing with that kind of resume. They just don't have it, right? You're talking about Austin Trout, Floyd Mayweather, Erislandy Lara, Miguel Cotto, Gennady Golovkin twice, Danny Jacobs. That's a hell of a resume. It's a hell of a resume right there. And you're talking about the top guys in every division. The very top guys in every division. You can't fault that. Now, what you could say though is, and then Sergey Kovalev is the number one. Believe it or not, he's the number one light heavyweight in the world because of his wins and because of the marquee names he has on his resume. That's why he's the number one light heavyweight. Box Record has him as that, at least. So, Canelo's going to go after him, obviously, right? He's not number 3. He's not number 2. He's number 1. Believe it or not. The other guys, because they got their title so soon, just recently, they're not ranked that high as yet. But I think skill-wise and in terms of any known weaknesses, I think Kovalev's the guy who is the weakest of them all. He's the most vulnerable. I think, or he seems to be the most vulnerable. And he's not as skilled as those other guys in a wide variety of areas. That's my thoughts on it. So anyway, I hope you guys enjoyed this video. I'm out of here. Smash that like button before you guys go. Tommy Temper saying something about me wrapping it up. You can't tell me how to wrap up my stuff, dude. I'm coming over, though. I'm coming over. So I'm going to catch you guys on the next thing. I don't know if it's a hangout I'm going to be on or what, but I want to chop it up. I think they're going to talk about Devin Haney versus something Abdulev. I can't remember what his first name is. Alexander Abdulev? I can't remember what it was. All right, guys. So, peace. I'm out of here.